Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. I can still picture the exact moment she walked in. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, lips pressed tight, and her whole attitude seemed to fill the hallway before she even uttered a word. It was a Monday morning, and there I was, sitting at my desk like any other day, sorting through the newest client schedules, confirming lunch reservations, and getting the briefing notes ready for the weekly operations meeting. These were the behind-the-scenes tasks that never appeared on a balance sheet, but without them, nothing ran smoothly. For 13 years, I'd been Richard Langston's executive assistant. He's the founder and CEO of Langston & Company, a consulting firm based in Chicago. It's not a giant corporation, but it's a respected name in the business. Richard built it from scratch, and I came on board in the second year when we were cramped into a shared office with a broken coffee machine and just 4 clients to our name. I've watched that company grow through tough economic times, legal battles, and even 2 complete rebrands. I was there every step of the way. So when the elevator doors opened and Melanie Langston, Richard's 28-year-old daughter, stepped out, something inside me shifted. She didn't say hello, didn't meet my eyes. She just brushed past my desk as if I were part of the furniture, which, honestly, was better than what she said next. "Sarah, right?" she called over her shoulder, sunglasses still on. "You're the secretary?" I forced a polite smile. Executive assistant to the CEO, I wanted to correct her. Instead, she just smirked. "Right. Well, that position won't be needed anymore. I'm restructuring things, going for a more modern vibe. Agile, flat hierarchy, all that." I blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry. How long have you been here? 10 years? 13? I asked softly. 13, she repeated, like it was something shameful. "That's a long time to be stuck behind a desk, but we're heading in a new direction. Effective immediately, your role is redundant." My heart hammered loud enough that I thought she'd hear it. Was this really happening? No warnings, no meetings, no explanations, just a cold dismissal on a Monday morning. Still, I smiled, calm and collected. After all, you don't last over a decade in corporate America without learning the power of silence. "No problem," I said quietly. She looked momentarily thrown off by how quickly I accepted it. No drama, no begging, no tears. "Great," she said, waving a perfectly manicured hand. "Pack up before lunch, and HR will contact you about your final paycheck." And just like that, she turned on her heel and disappeared into her new glass office. Richard's old office. I sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Not because I hadn't seen this coming. Richard had been hinting for months that Melanie was being groomed to take over. But I never expected it to happen like this. Not with such blatant disrespect. I packed up my things quietly. My coworkers glanced my way but didn't say a word. Some looked away. A few gave me sympathetic looks. I didn't blame them. It's hard to stand up for someone when the person holding the power is the boss's own daughter. By noon, I was out. Driving home, I sat in silence, heart pounding harder with every red light. Not because I was scared. Well, not only that, but because I knew things Melanie didn't. I knew how the client list was organized, where the contracts were filed, which contacts deserved handwritten thank you notes, which clients needed monthly check-ins, and which would walk away if they didn't hear a familiar voice on the other end of the line. I had been the quiet engine behind that company, never flashy or loud, but absolutely essential. And now, just like that, I was gone. I didn't cry. Not even once. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, opened my laptop, and started thinking about every client I'd nurtured, every partner I'd worked with, every meeting I'd prepared, and sometimes single-handedly saved Richard from major disasters. Melanie had made one critical mistake. She underestimated me. She thought I was just a replaceable secretary, irrelevant and easily forgotten. But when you pull a thread that's been holding the whole structure together, the unraveling doesn't happen right away. It begins slowly, almost imperceptibly. But once it starts, it's unstoppable. And I had just walked away, with every name, every phone number, and every quiet secret carefully tucked inside my personal notebook. She had no clue what was coming. Not yet. But she would. The next morning, I woke up early, more out of habit than need. For 13 years, my internal clock had been wired to get up before sunrise, beat the flood of emails, and anticipate problems before anyone else even noticed them. But now, I had no job, no commute, no meeting agendas to prepare, just silence, and an empty to-do list. Well, not entirely empty, because Melanie Langston may have fired me, but what she didn't realize was I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Not in any malicious way, no documents stolen, no secrets sold. I have too much integrity for that. What I did have was my notebook, a simple leather-bound journal, the kind you buy in bulk at office supply stores. I'd filled dozens over the years with notes, reminders, observations, and most importantly, relationship maps. Not just names and numbers, but who mattered to whom. Which client hated calls before 10 a.m., which only signed contracts on Wednesdays, who preferred handwritten notes over emails, which vendor once flew across the country just to have lunch with Richard, and who did it out of obligation, not loyalty. Melanie didn't ask about any of that. She didn't even glance at my desk when she let me go. She thought she could just slide in, shuffle the titles around, and the machine would keep running. But a company isn't a machine. It's a living, breathing network of relationships. And she had just severed its roots. By Wednesday, 2 days after my firing, I got my first call. It was from Gary Abrams, head of acquisitions at Deerwood Financial, a client we'd worked with for over 9 years. "Sarah," he said, his voice warm but confused. "We just got an automated email from some intern about the quarterly report. Is everything okay?" I hesitated. "They didn't tell you?" I asked. "About what?" "I'm no longer with Langston and Company." There was a long silence on the other end. "You're kidding." "No." "Is Richard okay?" "Why would he be?" I replied simply. "It was his daughter." Gary grunted. "Melanie's in charge now," he said. Another pause followed. "Well, that explains the mess." "Listen," he continued, "I don't want to get caught up in office politics, but we trusted you. You're the reason we stayed this long. I mean it, Sarah. You made things work. You always got the job done." We talked for a few more minutes. He never outright said he was pulling the account, but honestly, he didn't have to. His tone said it all, the first crack in the foundation. By Thursday, 3 more calls came in. Then 2 emails. By Friday afternoon, 7 clients had reached out. Confused, disoriented, some angry, one downright furious that Melanie had reassigned their account to someone who couldn't even pronounce their name properly on a Zoom call. "I thought we mattered to you," one message said. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I wasn't part of Langston and Company anymore. Instead, I logged each message carefully in a new notebook. That Friday evening, I got a text from Nicole, a former coworker on the strategy team. She'd always been kind when others acted like I was invisible. "Hey, can I call you? Something's happening here." "Of course," I said. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. "Sarah," she said quickly, "Melanie's freaking out." "Why?" I asked. 3 of our top 5 clients have gone dark. No replies, no calls. One canceled a review meeting and hasn't rescheduled. She's pacing like a lion trapped in a cage. I stayed silent. "She's blaming everyone," Nicole went on. "Claims the assistant she promoted doesn't know what she's doing. Shock of the century." I almost smiled. "But you know what she's not doing?" "What?" "She's not owning up to anything. She just keeps saying we'll win them back with innovation." Nicole laughed bitterly. "Sarah, she doesn't even know who to call. You were the only one with real rapport. She just assumed the name alone would keep clients loyal." I was quiet for a long moment. "Have you talked to Richard?" I finally asked. "Not directly. He's out of town. Melanie's telling everyone she's cleaning house and bringing the company into the next era." I could almost see her saying it, probably in a power suit, giving some unwarranted lecture on synergy. Nicole's voice softened. "People here miss you. I miss them too." We hung up after a few more updates. I sat on my couch, the house quiet and still around me. Melanie thought I was irrelevant. But here's the thing about people like her. They confuse being seen with being valuable. They think if you're not the one making speeches or closing deals, you don't matter. But I mattered. And by the time Monday came around again, she'd find out just how much. Because I hadn't called a single client. I hadn't rallied anyone. I hadn't said a word about my firing. The clients were walking away all on their own. All I had to do was wait, listen, document. Because the avalanche had started, and Melanie was standing right in its path. By Monday morning, it wasn't just a ripple. It was a wave. I hadn't set foot in the office since Melanie fired me. I hadn't sent a single message or warning. And yet, the company's once steady heartbeat had turned erratic. I could feel it from miles away. At 9:46 a.m., Nicole texted again. 3 more clients pulled out. Melanie's losing it. I stared at the screen, letting the weight of those words settle. In just 1 week, 6 major accounts had gone silent or officially severed ties. I flipped open my notebook and scanned the names. These weren't just any clients. They were the backbone of the firm. Each account worth hundreds of thousands a year, each with a long history with Langston and Company, and with me. And yet Melanie hadn't bothered to reach out to a single one personally. Why would she? In her mind, success was inherited. Respect was assumed. Loyalty was automatic. She never grasped the truth. Loyalty is earned in the quiet moments. Late-night calls, handwritten notes, rescheduled meetings during snowstorms, remembered birthdays, the steady assurance that someone, somewhere, is keeping the whole thing on track. That was me, and I was gone. Around 10:15 a.m., I got an unexpected email from Thomas, one of our former vendors who handled analytics dashboards for key clients. Subject line, "Just checking in. Hey Sarah, I just heard what happened. Melanie reached out Friday, said you left for personal reasons. That didn't sound like you. I just wanted to say I always appreciated your professionalism. Hope you're okay." I replied briefly, thanking him and wishing him well. No need to defend myself. The silence from Langston and Company was doing that for me. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, expecting another vendor or colleague. "Sarah," said a deep, familiar voice. What the hell is going on? It was Richard, Melanie's father, the original CEO. I straightened instinctively, even though I was home in leggings with a half-eaten sandwich on the table. "Hello, Richard." "I just landed an hour ago," he said, "and my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Clients, partners, even competitors. They're saying we've gone dark, that Melanie made some power play, and that you're gone." I paused. "She fired me last Monday, said my role wasn't needed anymore." There was a long silence. "She what?" "She called me just a secretary." Another pause. I pictured him rubbing his temples like he always did when stressed. "She said she was planning a reorganization. I thought that meant streamlining mid-level managers, not firing the most trusted person in the building." "You trusted me," I said. "She didn't," he said. "I can't even begin to explain how furious I am." "And the clients," he added. "God, Sarah, I had no idea you had that kind of connection. They're not just clients. They're relationships, and they noticed when I disappeared." He sighed deeply. "How many have we lost?" "I don't know the final count. Last I heard, at least 6 of the top 10 are reconsidering." "She never even looked at the client ledger," he muttered. "I can't believe I left the company in her hands." "You left it in her hands without giving her the tools to understand it." Another silence. Where are you right now? Home? Stay there. Don't talk to anyone else about this. I need to see for myself. He hung up. I sat quietly, trying to slow my pulse. A storm was coming. Not the frantic kind, the silent, calculated kind, the kind that shakes foundations. And I wasn't at the center anymore. I was the catalyst. At 3 p.m., Nicole messaged again. Melanie just locked herself in her office. Legal is here. Something's happening. At 4:12 p.m., Richard called again. She didn't tell me anything, he said. No greetings, no mention of the firings, no warning about the accounts. But you know what really hit me? What? She had no idea how the contracts were set up. You weren't just a secretary. You were listed as the point of contact on 4 client agreements. Some only signed because you were involved. I know. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I didn't want the credit. I just wanted the work to matter. There was a pause. His voice softened, like it always did. I see that now. He sighed again, longer this time. She's not equipped for this. I stayed silent. Then finally, Sarah, what would it take for you to come back? I closed my eyes, letting the question hang in the air. Because what I wanted wasn't just an apology. It was reckoning. I didn't answer right away. He asked again, urgency creeping into his voice. I knew he was pacing, his mind racing, trying to hold on to the remains of the company he'd built. Finally, I said, if I come back, it won't be to sit quietly behind a desk. Name your terms, he said without hesitation. Full decision-making authority over client services, I said. Reporting directly to you. I want my title changed. I want access to all reports and client data, and I want it in writing that Melanie will have no authority over my work. There was a pause, short but to the point. I can make that happen, he said. I'm not done, I added. I want to roll out a new onboarding system for staff, something we should have implemented years ago. I want a say in hiring decisions, and I want Melanie to issue a formal internal statement acknowledging her mistake. There was another pause. That last part might be tough. I know, but if I'm coming back to clean up this mess, everyone needs to know exactly why it happened. He let out a slow breath. Understood. In that moment, I realized he didn't just want me back out of guilt or loyalty. He needed me, pure business necessity. The company's framework was crumbling, and I was the only one who still knew where the support beams were. The next morning, I received an official email. Interim Director of Client Services, effective immediately, reporting directly to the CEO. Attached was the signed contract. Everything I'd asked for. I arrived at the office just after 11 a.m. No side door this time. I walked through the main lobby, my heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Heads turned. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. People watched like I was a phoenix rising from the ashes. Nicole met me at the elevator, looking like she wanted to hug me, but settled for a quiet nod. She's in the conference room, she whispered. Good. Richard was already there when I stepped inside, along with Melanie. She looked like a ghost. Pale shoulders tight, jaw clenched so hard it almost creaked. A couple of department heads sat along the far wall, unsure whether to stand or disappear into their chairs. I calmly placed my bag at the head of the table. Richard gestured for me to sit beside him. Melanie's eyes locked onto me like I was a ghost she hoped never to see again. Richard cleared his throat. As some of you know, we've had some operational disruptions. Disruptions? Melanie snapped. They're calling it a mass client exodus. Richard didn't flinch. Whatever you call it, we're responding. Sarah has agreed to return in a leadership role, effective immediately. Melanie's mouth dropped open slightly. What? You made decisions without understanding the structure beneath, Richard said bluntly. Now you're seeing the results. Sarah has the experience we need to regain control. This is not up for debate. Melanie laughed bitterly. She's a secretary. Or did we all forget that? No, I said, locking eyes with her. You forgot I was the bridge between your clients and contracts. You forgot I knew them, not just their names, but their patterns, expectations, values. And most importantly, you forgot companies don't thrive on hierarchy, they thrive on trust. She stood abruptly. So what? You're here to humiliate me? No, I replied evenly. I'm here to save what's left. Melanie looked at her father. You're really letting her do this? I'm not letting her, he said. I'm asking her, and you should be grateful. She said yes. A long, heavy silence filled the room. Melanie didn't sit back down. She turned and walked out, the door clicking softly, but with finality. Richard turned to the others. We'll issue a statement to our remaining clients this afternoon. Sarah will be the point of contact for all retention efforts. The department heads nodded, some visibly relieved. I stood. I'll need access to all communication logs from the past 3 weeks. I want to know exactly where we stand. Richard nodded. It's yours. I left the conference room with purpose, pulse steady and calm. Melanie had walked in a week ago thinking she could wipe the slate clean and rebuild from scratch. But she had no idea the foundation she tore down was the only thing keeping the company upright. And now I was holding the pieces. But I wasn't putting them back the same way. I was building something stronger, better. And she was officially on the outside. Over the next 48 hours, I barely looked up from my desk. First step, stabilize what was left. My inbox was a battlefield. Clients were confused, nervous, some angry. Others had gone completely silent, and that was worse. I knew the signs. Silence meant talks were already happening with competitors. I reached out personally. No canned replies, no marketing fluff. Every email I wrote myself, filled with details only years of real connection could provide. Birthdays, kids' names, frustrations I'd fixed at 11 p.m. on weekends. I wasn't just asking them to stay. I was reminding them why they chose us. By day 2's end, I'd spoken to 14 clients. 9 confirmed they were open to renegotiation. 5 were non-committal, but I knew I'd bought us time. That was more than Melanie managed all week. Nicole stopped by that afternoon with 2 coffees. You look like you haven't blinked since this morning. Probably haven't. She hesitated before setting the cup down. Not to stir the pot, but Melanie's been telling people she asked you to come back. I smiled faintly. Letter? Yep, and you're not going to correct it. I don't need to. People see who's really fixing things. Nicole nodded slowly. Still, it's pathetic. That's desperation, I said. And desperation always leaves a trail. Later that evening, I was in the conference room when Richard walked in. He looked older, more worn than I remembered. The week's weight settled deep in his shoulders. How bad is it? He asked. Realistically, we've lost close to 80% of our high-value accounts. If we don't salvage the rest in the next 10 days, we'll need serious downsizing. He exhaled sharply and sat across from me. I never thought it'd unravel this fast, because you underestimated the glue. He looked up. You mean you? I didn't answer. He leaned forward. Sarah, I let my daughter run this company into the ground. I thought giving her the title would make her rise to it, but she used it like a shield. She didn't lead. She ruled. Titles don't make leaders, I said. Actions do. He nodded slowly. So what now? You let me finish what I started. Give me space to rebuild our reputation, not just outside, but inside too. Staff morale is rock bottom. People are scared. They don't trust leadership. We can't sell stability to clients if our own house is chaos. He tilted his head. And Melanie? I don't need her gone, but I do need her out of my way. He gave a tired, faint smile. Consider it done. By week's end, we launched a formal outreach campaign. Every team member got a client list and templates I created. Every call was documented. Every concern tracked. We shifted focus from excuses to accountability. It wasn't flashy or viral, but it was real, and it was working. On Friday afternoon, Melanie stormed into my office uninvited, red-faced, voice sharp. "You've been undermining me." I looked up calmly. "Good afternoon, Melanie." "Don't play nice. You've been erasing me, taking over everything. People look at you like you're the CEO. I'm just doing my job." "No, you're doing my job. I'm the future of this company." "No," I said evenly. "You were the experiment. The future's still undecided." She laughed coldly. "You think you've won because you got your little title and fixed a few contracts? I think I've been trusted by the clients, the staff, and your father." "Trust isn't something that just comes with a title, Melanie. It's earned over time, with actions and respect." She shot me a glare before turning sharply and storming out of the room. I didn't flinch or raise my voice. Instead, I calmly faced the contract on my desk and resumed working. Because when you understand your own value, there's no need to shout or prove yourself. Your results speak louder than words, and those results were becoming impossible to ignore. When Monday morning arrived, the atmosphere in the company had changed. It wasn't fixed yet, far from it, but there was a noticeable difference. The halls, once eerily silent, now hummed with tentative life. Meetings no longer felt like sessions held under a cloud of fear and hesitation. Voices that had been muffled began to speak up. Department heads stopped making excuses and started offering genuine ideas. When they passed me in the corridors, their nods were no longer mere politeness, but sincere acknowledgement. Everyone understood now. I was no longer just the woman who quietly scheduled flights and managed calendars behind a desk. I was the one who had held this company together, the one who rebuilt what had almost been destroyed by arrogance. And Melanie? She had become quieter, colder. Her once commanding and loud presence had faded into a barely noticeable shadow lingering in the background. Officially, she wasn't fired. Her security badge still granted her access. Her nameplate remained on her office door, but the trust she once commanded had evaporated. She could feel it, and so could I. On Tuesday, Richard summoned me to his office. Though his face was serious and marked with exhaustion, his eyes held a calm steadiness I hadn't seen in weeks. He motioned for me to sit. "We've stabilized," he began. "Your efforts turned the tide." I reviewed the latest client retention reports this morning. We managed to bring back 60% of the accounts we'd lost. "I know." "I personally spoke with most of them." He nodded approvingly. "The board's fully aware of your contributions. They recognize that you authored the internal recovery plan, trained the interim client teams, and managed staff communications during one of our most turbulent months." I waited quietly as he reached into a folder. Inside lay a formal offer letter. "I want you to remain with us permanently as Chief Client Officer," he said. "Executive title. You'll oversee all client relations strategies with full autonomy. Your sole report will be directly to me." I glanced over the offer. The salary increase was generous. The benefits package had been upgraded, but none of that swayed my decision. I said yes because this time the title truly reflected the reality. I stood and shook his hand. "I'll accept," I said, "but on one condition." His eyebrow rose in interest. "Go ahead." "I want to establish a mentorship program for women, support staff, anyone who's been dismissed as just a secretary, just an assistant, or just a junior. No one else should be underestimated the way I was." A rare, genuine smile spread across his face. "Consider it done." I left his office carrying the letter in my hand and a fierce sense of purpose in my chest, not fueled by anger or revenge, but by resolve. That very afternoon, walking past the glass conference room where Melanie used to hold court, I spotted her standing alone. She stared out the window, arms crossed, her reflection merging with the city skyline behind her. When she noticed me, she turned. Her eyes looked tired. No makeup, no proud posture, no false bravado. Just a young woman who had mistaken authority for real power, and power for invulnerability. "I know you believe I don't deserve this office," she said softly. "I don't have an opinion on that," I replied evenly. "Deserving isn't the point. It's about what you do once you're given a chance." She looked away, breaking the gaze. "You made me look weak." "No," I answered firmly. "That was all on you. I just refused to hide it." A heavy silence settled between us. Then, almost hesitantly, she asked like a child seeking comfort, "Did you hate me?" "No," I said honestly. "I felt sorry for you, because you stepped into a legacy built by your father and never bothered to understand the people who helped build it." She didn't reply. I left her standing there. Later that evening, sitting in my new office, glass walls, a sweeping river view, and a nameplate that finally felt justified, I pulled out the worn notebook where everything had started. Its pages were dog-eared and the ink faded in places, corners bent from constant flipping over the years. I turned to the last page and penned one final note. It's never about the title on your door. It's about the trust that supports it. Weeks slipped by. The company didn't merely recover, it transformed. The mentorship program launched quietly but quickly gained momentum. Within months, employee engagement scores tripled. Former interns and assistants stepped into new leadership roles. Confidence spread like wildfire through the ranks. Clients noticed the change, because in the end, people don't remain loyal to logos, slogans, or organizational charts. They stay loyal to those who show up when it matters most. And I had shown up, even when I was told I was irrelevant, even when I was discarded like unwanted office clutter. I didn't burn the building down. I let it crumble under its own arrogance. And when the dust finally settled, I didn't point fingers. I got to work. That's what true leadership looks like. And that's a legacy no one can take away.